I never imagined that one ordinary evening could shift the entire course of my life. We expect big changes to arrive with loud announcements. A wedding, a funeral, a new job, a cross-country move. But sometimes the most life-altering moments begin quietly with the clink of a glass, the hum of a television, or the sound of someone's footsteps on the stairs. That night started so small, so normal. Dinner had been uneventful, just pasta reheated from earlier in the day. Watson, my husband, had called to say he was working late again. His absence had become predictable, almost routine. After clearing the plates, settled into the couch with a glass of wine and a film I had already watched a dozen times before. It was the kind of evening where you expect nothing, where silence is supposed to cradle you until sleep comes. But silence wasn't comforting anymore. It had become a constant presence, an unwelcome companion. Our house, though warm in color and well-kept, often felt more like a waiting room than a home. A place where you sat quietly, leafing through time, waiting for something to change. Watson's late nights, his endless trips, his muted conversations from hotel rooms. They had chipped away at the marrow of our marriage. What we once shared had reduced itself to practicalities, schedules, bills, and occasional check-ins. And then in that very same summer, Leo came into the picture. Leo was not a stranger. He was Watson's son from his first marriage, a boy I had seen at family gatherings over the years. Now returned as a young man of 21, he came to stay with us for a few weeks. The plan being simple: figure out his college applications, search for part-time work, and get some breathing room before making bigger decisions. At first, his presence in the house felt like fresh air. He was polite, helpful, never demanding. We became companions in small, ordinary ways. We'd meet in the kitchen for midnight snacks, laugh over old black and white films, even jog together in the quiet of early mornings when the streets still yawned with sleep. His energy carried a lightness, a contrast to the weight of Watson's constant absence. It felt safe, even pleasant. Nothing about it seemed dangerous. Not until it did. Because that's the thing about boundaries. They don't always break suddenly. Sometimes they bend first, bending so slowly that you don't notice until you've already crossed the line. The evening that changed, everything didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive with thunder or drama. It slipped in quietly, disguised as nothing more than another night in a house that had already grown too quiet. Watson had called again to say he'd be working late. His voice on the phone was clipped, efficient, already halfway distracted. I poured myself a glass of wine, switched on the television, and curled into the corner of the couch with a blanket. The film playing wasn't new, just one of those familiar comfort movies I watched more out of habit than interest. That's when Leo came downstairs. He wore loose sweatpants, a t-shirt, his hair still damp from the shower. He didn't look like the child I remembered from family gatherings, all awkward limbs and shy glances. He looked older now, more defined, his presence filling the room in a way that startled me. He sat across from me, unusually quiet. His eyes carried something different that night, a kind of intensity, steady and searching. For a while, he didn't speak, and I tried to pretend I was absorbed in the film, though I could feel the weight of his gaze on me. Then, softly, almost as though he was talking to himself, he said, "You look lonely." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. I gave a small laugh, brushing it off, and said I was just tired, but he didn't look away. His eyes lingered, taking in details I hadn't realized anyone noticed. The book left open on the side table, the playlist humming quietly from my phone. The perfume I had absent-mindedly put on even though no one was home to notice. At first his attention had seemed harmless, flattering even. When someone notices the little things about you after years of being overlooked, it feels like sunlight slipping through a window you thought was sealed shut. But that night the light felt sharper, almost dangerous. And then he said the words that should never have been spoken. "I don't think Watson deserves you." My heart stuttered. My first instinct was to shut it down, to tell him that was an inappropriate thing to say, to remind him of his place in this house. And I did tell him to stop, but not with the kind of force I should have. My voice wavered. My resolve wavered because the truth, The ugly truth was that a part of me wanted to hear those words. A part of me wanted to believe them. After so many years of feeling unseen, those words landed like a forbidden gift. That night, instead of ending the conversation and walking away, we talked and talked. The hours slipped by unnoticed until dawn began to creep in through the curtains. He spoke about his life, about not fitting in, about the weight of expectations he could never quite live up to. I spoke too about the emptiness that had seeped into my marriage, about the loneliness that had become my constant shadow. Somewhere in those hushed confessions, walls began to fall. And when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull it away. That was the first crossing. The moment a line blurred into something dangerous, something neither of us could take back. The morning after that long conversation, I told myself it had only been words. Just talk, nothing more. I convinced myself that holding his hand had been nothing but comfort, a fleeting weakness born from loneliness and wine. By daylight, it was easier to pretend it hadn't meant anything. But pretending never lasts because when you share secrets that deep, when you show someone the parts of yourself you've hidden for years, it changes things. Every glance carries a memory. Every brush of fingers lingers too long. Silence, once oppressive, suddenly hums with possibility. The days that followed were different. We cooked together, laughed too easily, sat closer than we should have. I caught myself watching him when he wasn't looking, and I knew he did the same. What had started as companionship had transformed into something heavier, charged with unspoken tension, and then came the night it finally broke. Watson was gone again, away on another business trip. The house felt suspended in stillness. Leo and I sat together in the living room, the glow of a single lamp painting shadows across the walls. A storm rumbled outside, raindrops streaking the windows, the kind of weather that makes the world feel smaller, more intimate. We were talking, though I couldn't have told you about what. The words had become just background noise. What mattered was the way his eyes kept locking onto mine, the way the space between us seemed to shrink without either of us moving. And then it happened. He leaned in. For a heartbeat, I froze. Every voice in my head screamed at me to stop, to pull away, to remind him and myself that this was wrong. But the louder voice, the one born of years of neglect, whispered something else. When was the last time you felt wanted? Truly wanted. I didn't move away. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, almost questioning. But when I didn't stop it, when I answered it, the hesitation dissolved. It deepened. It consumed. And in that moment, I knew the line we'd been tiptoeing along had vanished completely. That night, in the quiet storm of our house, we crossed every boundary. We gave in to something that had been building silently, dangerously, until it could no longer be contained. When the storm outside finally passed, we lay there in the silence, our breathing heavy. The weight of what we had done pressing down on us. I should have felt only shame, and I did feel it, sharp and undeniable. But alongside it was something else. Relief, hunger, even a strange sense of freedom. Yet beneath it all, a darker truth settled in. Nothing would ever be the same because secrets like this don't stay hidden forever. They fester. They surface. And when they do, they destroy everything in their path. That night was the beginning of the end. Not just of my marriage, but of the person I thought I